Jamar Chase with the hip injury, expected to be sidelined for 4 to 6 weeks. This feels like
Why
little
can't we have
nowhere.
nice things?
We cannot
Connor,
have nice things.
Why can't we have nice things? This sucks.
It does.
It's a tough one. It's not great. Good for Tyler Boyd. Managers, that's about it.
That's the biggest bump.
Yeah, I mean, so Tyler Boyd, look, so far this year, he's had the most scrimmage yards from the slot, the 5th most targets from the slot. Obviously, coming off the big week last week in Week 7 when he went 8 for 155. And look, this is a pass-happy team. I mean, the Bengals have, after kind of going sort of run-heavy early in the year and trying to force Joe Mixon down everyone's throats, they've really opened it up for Joe Burrow here. And so with the expectation, that's the news coming out, that they're going to move Boyd all over. He's not just going to be a slot guy. They'll play him on the outside as well. You'll see some Mike Thomas as well. But, Tyler Boyd and Hayden Hurst get a bump here. Look, T. Higgins was already a locked-in wide receiver 1. Now he's more of a top 5 guy than a top 10 guy. But this is good news for, there's a lot of targets to go around with Jamar Chase out.
Yeah, there are. And I don't think this is sky is falling stuff for Cincinnati either, because they do have that depth. This isn't like Cooper Kupp going down or Justin Jefferson for their teams. And the next 4 weeks, the next 4 games, Cleveland, Carolina, Pittsburgh, Tennessee, with a bye in there as well. That's pretty friendly. So I think that Joe Burrow, for instance, he'll be fine.
Yeah, at 27% target share for Jamar Chase now up for grabs. And our expectation here is that Boyd, Hurst, and I guess some Mike Thomas, we'll see if he's worth the other Mike Thomas, if you will, if he's worth picking up. But yeah, I mean, I don't believe Boyd is 100% rostered, and so he's mostly rostered. And obviously, when the news came out, he got picked up a lot. But if for some reason he's somehow out there in your league, obviously picked him up. But yeah, I think Boyd comes in for me this week at wide receiver 25. So which is much higher than I've normally had him.
How about Hayden Hurst? Does this do anything for Hayden Hurst in terms of targets, or do you think it just funnels to all the wide receivers besides obviously Chase?
No, I mean, Hurst has had a nice year, and certainly, again, they're going to be pass heavy. He's going to be out on the field quite a bit. He comes in at number 8 for me this week. They play the Monday night game against the Browns, so I have Hurst as a top 8 fantasy tight end. You see it there on your screen with Boyd at 25. Higgins comes in at wide receiver 7. Burrow still a top 5 play for me, to Jay's point there. And, of course, Mixon comes in at RB8.
Yeah, Mixon is the one I think who might benefit the most, because Zach Taylor, deep in his soul, he just wants to run the ball. And against that Cleveland defense, they can't defend the run.
He's definitely got some Arthur Smith in him, Zach Taylor.
Oh, yes.
I don't care. I'm going to run the ball.
Smith quotient.
Yeah, the ghost of Hugh Jackson.
Yeah.
1,000%.
Establish it above all else. Besides Jamar Chase, many impact players that have not practiced this week, guys. Let's take a look at those. And I think we have to start with Deebo Samuel, who was not seen at practice Thursday. I think we're starting to trend with that hamstring injury that Deebo Samuel could be down this weekend. Obviously, he's not the only one on a pretty long list.
By the way, just before, as we're looking here at this screen, we can get into it a little bit later, but Ezekiel Elliott officially ruled out as we just hit the air as well. Got the alert from the Fantasy Life app. Also, not pictured here, but Chuba Hubbard has officially been ruled out as well. So we'll talk about those situations, the running back situations in Dallas and Carolina. But let's start with Deebo Samuel here, guys. And Brandon Ayuk becomes pretty interesting here, right? He's now had back-to-back games with 11 targets, right? A 28% target share over the last 2 weeks. We know there's a connection between Jimmy Garoppolo and Brandon Ayuk, Jay. So what are we thinking about Ayuk, especially if Deebo is out or at least somewhat limited?
Yeah, I think he's basically must start. Like you said, 22 targets the past 2 weeks. He's the favorite red zone target for Jimmy Garoppolo. And look, I don't think it's going to be the prettiest game between the Niners and the Rams, but you wouldn't expect it to be a 13-10 type of game either. And so I think that CMC, first full game, that will take away a little bit from the passing game, but that's probably mitigated by Deebo likely being out. So I think Ayuk is must start. And look, everyone's starting George Kittle anyway, but George Kittle even becomes more of a must start.
Yeah, and I do think you see Chris McCaffrey have a really heavy workload here. Some of the stuff they might have used Deebo for, some of the
manufactured touches.
Manufactured touches, the reverses, that I think those go to CMC or other guys. So Ayuk will be in there as well. But yeah, suddenly Ayuk looking up. He comes in at wide receiver 24 for me this week. And if Deebo's officially ruled out, might go a little bit higher.
Yep.
As we saw and said, Ezekiel Elliott is officially ruled out. He was not playing Week 8 with the knee injury. I mean, that leads us to the question, how high does Tony Pollard climb now with Zeke down? Everybody's been clamoring for more touches for Pollard. Now they get what they wish for, just in a way where you lose Zeke.
Yeah, I think he to me, right now, I currently have him at RB16, but that was with the idea that Ezekiel Elliott might play. I'm going to move him up here. I think he probably gets into the, borderline top 10-ish for me. I think I would move Tony Pollard. I'm just sitting here looking at it like he's in that Raheem Mostert, Devin Singletary, Travis Etienne range for me, which you love the matchup at home against the Chicago Bears, who are bottom 10 against the run over the last 4 weeks. So, yeah, to me, I'm just sitting here looking at my rankings here. I think I would move him just ahead. I'd move him ahead of Etienne. I have Etienne at 12, and he's playing the Broncos, so I'd move him ahead of Etienne, probably ahead of Dameon Pierce as well against the Titans. So, yeah, Pollard comes in at probably like 10 or 11 for me this week. Absolutely must start.
Yep. Jay, dare I ask, is the Cowboys offense even a little scarier with the idea of Pollard being involved much more heavily?
I think so. I mean, the line doesn't move at all with Ezekiel Elliott going out. And there will be some smart people out there that argue that this is good for the Cowboys in a way. I don't think it necessarily is, because you want both of them and the ability to have protection against one going down in game. But Pollard is an explosive and elite back when he gets the ball. The Cowboys are a 10-point favorite at home against the Bears, so expect that they'll be running, and so Pollard's an RB1.
Yeah, and by the way, D'Onta Foreman, who had the big game last week, Carolina facing the Falcons this week. Falcons are a pretty good run defense, but just the volume that we expect D'Onta Foreman to get with Chuba Hubbard out. I think D'Onta Foreman, who I currently have at 28, and I think he'll move up a little bit, I think he becomes, a viable RB2 this week.
Let's get into Thursday Night Football. Yes, there was football played last night, despite all this injury news. The Ravens beat the Bucs 27-22. Bucs offense, while the numbers are not hideous, did not really look right throughout this game, guys. Levante David from the Bucs defense, of course, on the loss after the game. It ain't no more looking in the mirror. You've got to dig in your soul and pull one out. Whatever you think you're doing, it ain't it. We've got to find a way to get better some way, somehow.
They were bad.
Do you think they could dig out of this? Doesn't look good.
It does not look good. They were bad. By the way, I'm not convinced Todd Bowles is a great coach. I think he's a really good defensive coordinator, but I'm not convinced he's a great head coach. Like, they look undisciplined, they look unorganized, they just, I think the offense misses Bruce Arians. That much is clear as well. I don't know if they can dig their way out of this. What I can tell you is that for those of us who play fantasy football, I think the players you care about, the Mike Evans, the Chris Godwins, Leonard Fournette to an extent, we'll talk about all of them, but I think they'll continue to have value.
Yeah, I think with Brady, his demise it's a little premature. Like, Brady is fine. It's just he's not Tom Brady from last year, where he was favourite for MVP for much of the season. Look at his past 3 games. Obviously not very good against the Steelers or Panthers, not putting up huge production. Also just not getting the yards per attempt. He's throwing it a ton and just not getting the yards. Last night, not great either, but at least he did, have the touchdown, no picks, and he does put up 17 fantasy points. So I think Brady's like the 14th best quarterback in the league right now.
Yeah, listen, a little bit higher. You think about that Panthers game. Mike Evans catches that touchdown. It's a different scenario. Last night, he did throw a second touchdown. He threw a touchdown pass to Cade Otton. It gets called back due to the holding penalty. Looked like he would have had a touchdown pass to Chris Godwin, but there's a false start on Leonard Fournette. And there were a number of times, because I took Mike Evans anytime touchdown, so I'm watching this very closely. There were a number of times where Mike Evans was open in the end zone, and they just couldn't connect, and Brady was off. And that's I think, part of it is that Tom Brady, who is so accurate, doesn't seem as accurate as he has been in the past. As we see some footage here of Tom Brady just missing his guys. It's weird, right? They're having to do a lot more. There's one, right? Evans was wide open in the end zone right there, and just a lower pass, and that's 7. And so, he's just here. The deep ball to Evans also gets underthrown as well. Just inaccurate. Not on the same page with his guys as well. Not shown in this highlights package that we're sitting here watching is the fact that he was also dumping off a lot. There were a lot. It just felt like they weren't being nearly as aggressive downfield. A lot of those passes, and you sort of see why, because when they were being aggressive downfield, for the most part, they were ineffective. They hit a couple of big ones with Godwin and Evans, but for the most part, like, you're right, he just doesn't look like Tom Brady. Like, he doesn't look like the guy that you're scared of.
No, he doesn't. And it's not just the deep ball. There's some velocity that clearly looks like it's missing. It's that he's short hopping these 3rd and 8 passes, which is just stuff that Tom Brady doesn't do. And obviously there's a lot going on there, and who knows. But still, I think the concern coming into the season on the Bucs was the offensive line. Offensive line is fine. They are protecting him. Evans and Godwin are healthy. I think Brady should figure it out a little bit as the season goes on. So I still think you're starting Tom Brady each week, unless for some reason, you happen to pick up Geno Smith and he's got an amazing matchup.
I don't know. I mean, I'm not dropping him, but I don't think I've moved him out of must-start territory. Through 8 weeks, he's got 9 touchdowns. I mean, last year he had 9 touchdowns in the first 2 games, and they play the Rams next. Like, you don't feel good about that. They'll have 10 days to prepare, but look, there's a report out this morning that they've filed for divorce, and that Tom and and I don't know whether that's true or not. I don't want to get into the man's personal life.
They both announced it.
Right, they both
him and Giselle.
Right,
yeah.
so they. But my point is, the only reason I bring that up is I don't want to speculate on a man's personal life or hers, or as somebody who's gone through divorce myself, it's awful. What I would say is that, but there's going to be, because they are such a public couple, because there's going to be even more distractions over the next 10 days with this news than there would be for a normal football player who's struggling a little bit.
Yep. I think with Brady, I think the thing to hold on to is that they still are throwing a lot. He's had 42 pass attempts or more in 5 straight games, so you're still going to get that volume, which I think gives you a bit of a floor.
And like I said, again, we are looking at a year in which quarterback fantasy play is more or less depressed. There's the Mahomes, the Allens, the Jalen Hurtses of the world, Lamar, but for the most part, it's Herbert hasn't been Herbert. Russ Wilson hasn't been Russell Wilson. Rodgers, Stafford, Dak hasn't done anything that makes you, stand up and take notice yet. So my point is 17 fantasy points and should have been more last night. It's just right. He ain't the guy. He ain't the top 3 fantasy quarterback that we had last year. But is he usable? Yes, but he's just not he's no longer, for me, no longer must start. But so few quarterbacks these days are, including the guy he'll face next. Matthew Stafford's not must start anymore.
No, not at all.
Jay, you mentioned how much they're throwing. With that has arrived less running for Leonard Fournette, less usage. I mean, second straight game with less than 10 rushes. His last 2 games, 8 rushes for 19 yards. This game, 9 for 24. Concern level with that with Fournette as this offense kind of goes the wrong direction.
Yeah, I mean, a little bit of concern. I think the game script is a huge part of it. Last night, Fournette got the first carry on the first play of the second half and then never carried the ball again. Because they were down and they had a drive with Rachaad White. So I think you're concerned, but I do think he has something of a flaw just because he still is Leonard Fournette. He still does get the receiving game usage, which gave you an extra 6 points or so last night. So I still think you're starting Leonard Fournette. It's just that he's not the RB1 locked in that he could have been.
He's more of a touchdown-dependent RB2, but again, 4 touchdowns in the last 4 games. He's getting, they like giving it to him when they're in close. So I think you're still starting Leonard Fournette, but yes, I would lower. I think his overall value is lower than it has been recently.
Let's talk about the Ravens. Big night for Lamar Jackson.
But just last thing before we move to the Ravens, Rachaad White remains a must-add. If he's still available in your league somehow, he is somebody that would be a top 10 running back if anything happened to Fournette, and they're clearly increasing his role week after week.
Yep.
With the Ravens, Lamar Jackson, 2 touchdowns through the air. He had over 40 rushing yards, almost 22 fantasy points. And this was without Mark Andrews for most of the game, as Isaiah Likely had a huge game, but Lamar, a massive week for him.
Yeah, and he was the big winner last night. It was coming out of the first half, I was texting friends being like, where is the 2019 guy? And then he showed up straight away, which is almost on cue. And then he has that 25-yard run, and then he basically just takes over the game. And look, I think there's 5 guys in the league who can win MVP this year. Lamar Jackson is definitely one of them. But Matthew, has there ever been a bigger gap between real-life useful offense and fantasy useful offense than this Baltimore team? Because it's just Lamar Jackson right now, and then Gus Edwards goes down, Mark Andrews is hurt. He does it in the second half with guys like Devin Duvernay, Kenyon Drake, and co. I just don't know what you do fantasy-wise.
DeMarcus Robinson, nothing, and that's a great point. We'll talk about the injuries here in a second, but there was no one that you're probably sitting there watching the game and you're frustrated, but you can't fault yourself I wish I'd started Kenyon Drake or DeMarcus Robinson I mean, like it is like it's just. Just a bunch of randos.
But do you stash Isaiah Likely?
Oh, 1,000%.
Right.
So this is somebody that, Jay, we talked about Isaiah Likely in the preseason. We love him. This guy was a star in the preseason. We thought they would use more 2 tight end sets. Candidly, I thought Isaiah Likely would be used more than he has been. I have him in every dynasty league except for one. I'm super annoyed about that. Damian, our producer here, outbid me in that dynasty league. That's the annoying thing of like playing in fantasy leagues with the guys you do fantasy analysis
they figure it
with.
out pretty quickly.
Yeah, exactly. Well, they know what you're into.
Yeah.
But anyway, I mean, like, so I love Likely, and basically felt like last night he became a 1-for-1 replacement to Mark Andrews, right? I mean, like he was. You were like, oh yeah, that's the guy that we saw in the preseason. Where's he been this whole time, right? He ran a route on 69% of his snaps. He played the most snaps of any Ravens pass catcher, right? I mean, 6 for 77 and a touchdown, and looked the part, guys.
Yep. If Mark Andrews, any week that Mark Andrews misses, Isaiah Likely is like a nailed-on top 7, top 8 tight end. And I think, just going back to the rushing attack, I think the most kind of poetic thing about it is that the Ravens carried the ball 33 times last night. They averaged 7 yards per carry. Fantasy-wise, who was the most productive rusher? It was Devin Duvernay, because he was the one who got the touchdown, which just sums it up.
Yeah, I mean, Kenyon Drake also got a touchdown, a receiving touchdown as well. But yes, I mean, like, super frustrating as well, especially for Gus Edwards, who ran the ball well. Got 11 touches. He was averaging, almost 5 yards a carry. But he leaves the game with an injury, as does Mark Andrews. Had a shoulder injury in the second period. We'll talk about Bateman in a second. But after the game, head coach John Harbaugh saying he didn't think it was serious for either Andrews or Edwards. We'll probably learn more today and over the weekend. Worth noting, next week the Ravens play the Saints, and then they're on a bye. And so at 5-3, do they decide to sit Andrews? Because he's been nicked up, like he was nicked up last week as well. Do they maybe decide to sit Andrews? If he does, Likely, even though it's a tough matchup against the Saints are really good against opposing tight ends, Likely would be a top 10 fantasy tight end if Andrews were to miss in any game that he misses.
Yeah, particularly because they won this game and they go to 5-3. On BetMGM, they're minus 250 to win the division now. Obviously, Chase goes down for the Bengals. That helps there. So you would think they might skew conservative, particularly after Andrews did nothing the week prior.
And the bottom line is now they have a backup that they feel like they can trust.
Yep.
I mean, he was great as a blocker last night, so they can keep him on the field for those pass-catching opportunities. Andrew's dealing with upper and lower body injuries. Maybe he does get that breather next week.
Just quickly on Likely, Connor. Isaiah Likely in college had the highest PFF grade of any tight end in history. Did you see this in college? Was he this type of guy?
Super productive at Coastal Carolina. The question is, of course, level of competition. He gets to go through the All-Star circuit because he was a senior. And the bottom line is he just needed to add weight and become stronger as a blocker. He was a good move blocker in college, but he was a pass-catching tight end, a move tight end. Baltimore gets him in their system. He gets stronger. They're letting him play on the line, off the line, and he looks great. So the potential was always there, and he went to a place that it's an offense that runs through tight ends.
Yep.
So it maximizes that potential.
Yep.
Yeah, hopefully this is, even if Andrews comes back, that they, this is a little bit of a breakout game for Isaiah Likely, as their pass catchers have been inconsistent.
Yes.
Maybe they do like to run 2 tight end sets quite a bit. Obviously, it's a run-heavy offense. Maybe Likely has some deeper league value, even if Andrews is back.
Yep.
Rashad Bateman drives me up a wall.
You done? Cut Dumpsterville?
Yeah.
Dunzo.
By the way, if you play on Yahoo, and I hate this rule, but if you do play on Yahoo, it is what it is. Don't hate the player, hate the game. If you play on Yahoo, you can drop Rashad Bateman. If you didn't start him, but he's just on your bench, drop him.
I don't like
somebody
that.
else useful. I hate that too.
Yeah.
But it is the rule. That's
Feels like a free pass.
Yeah.
Yahoo allows that. I don't
Madden.
like that. I think they should change it, but that is the rule. So Bateman, who played in 9 of the first 10 snaps of the game, and then once again, he keeps getting hurt. Like, he's just not getting any looks. Like, they spread it around. It's a run-heavy offense. Like, no.
It's also the same foot we're dealing with now. This was the foot injury that kept him out, and now it's coming back. That's a little concerning.
And also, even when he was healthy, like, he had those 2 bomb touchdowns. One, the 75-yarder against Miami, then one against the Jets in week 1. Outside of that, he's really done nothing. Only twice in his career with Lamar as his quarterback has he gotten more than 4 receptions in a game. So you're hanging on to the idea of potential, which has never actually been realized. And at this point, I think there are probably just better options, particularly with guys like, is there more upside in Kadarius Toney than Rashad Bateman at this point?
Yeah, we talked about Kadarius Toney on the show yesterday. Connor and I did because that news broke while we were on the air, but you weren't here yesterday. Any quick thoughts on Kadarius Toney to the Chiefs?
I think it's a similar situation to Isaiah Pacheco, where you have to pick him up just because of the upside, because he's in an offense with Mahomes, but there's a 90% chance that he's not going to give you what you want, but just for that 10%, you have to pick him up.
Yeah, I agree with that take. I'm just not going crazy on it because, again, it is sort of death by 1,000 cuts when you face the Chiefs. Yep. They use so many guys here, similar to Buffalo, right? I mean, and we'll talk as we get into the waiver wire show next week, and we'll see about the health of Bateman and everyone else. But, nice games for Devin Duvernay, and I thought Demarcus Robinson looked good.
He's good.
Just to the eye test. So nice job there by the Ravens. Whether you can count on them for fantasy production remains to be seen. We'll talk about that. Guess where we're going tomorrow?
Going to Buffalo.
We're going to Buffalo. Me and you, not Connor.
No.
Yeah, Connor's got another gig he's got to deal with, but you and I
just leave me behind.
Jay Croucher, you and I, Michael Smith, and a cast of thousands, literally a cast of thousands, will be live from Highmark Stadium outside the Bills, 11 a.m. to 1 o'clock Eastern. Come one, come all, and if you can't see us there in person, watch us on Peacock.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.